Thank you for watching CTR TV. Today's special report focuses on the captive insurance fund set up to help homeowners dealing with crumbling foundations here in Connecticut. And joining us today is the superintendent of the Indemnity company set up to manage that fund. It's the Connecticut Foundations Solutions Indemnity Company. Michael Maglaras, you are overseeing this massive undertaking. The application process opened on January 10th.
It did.
We've had a couple weeks now. How has that launch gone?
It's actually gone very well, and thank you for asking, and also thank you for having me here today. It went well. We had over 170 applications in the first 55 minutes.
So people were ready?
People were ready. They had their points of evidence established. They had checked their PDFs. They were up on the site and applying electronically, which is what we'd asked them to do. The response was very fine, very good. The system didn't crash. We've taken phone calls since then. We will be cutting checks this week for some of those claimants.
Just to clarify, there are two types of claims people can file.
There
Type
are.
1 is to replace or repair a foundation that needs work. Type 2 is for someone who has already done that work. You mentioned checks are going to be cut this week. Do those apply to one type of claim versus the other?
They apply to Type 2 claims. Type 2 claims, which are reimbursements, as you rightly point out, means that the homeowner's done the work and they've applied to us, subject to our guidelines, to have all or part of that work reimbursed. Those checks, some of those checks, for approximately the first dozen or so claimants will be cut this week, at least the deposits will be. That puts them in a payment stream on a deposit basis to get the rest of their reimbursement over the next 12 months. What that also means is that very shortly, the Type 1 claims, the replacement claims, which are much more complex to administer and for us to triage, they're going to be in the payment line, we think, by around the second week of February.
So you guys are moving right along.
Yeah, we're moving right along. It's a slow process. If I could, each one of those applications contained upwards of 20 to 30 megabytes of data. That's 150 to 200 pages of data. So my claims adjustment team has been sorting through that data, as you can imagine, to validate applications and otherwise get the process going.
There is a limited amount of money in this fund. Should people apply sooner rather than later? Are there limits? A lot of questions. I mean, there's a lot of concern here.
There's a lot of concern and a lot of questions, and rightly so. Our answer to that question from day one, my personal answer, has been get in line. If we know who you are and we know you have a crumbling foundation or you have tested positive for pyrrhotite, it is better to be in line with us than not better. It is better for us to know who you are and get some sense of the progress of the condition of your home, because candidly, we do have finite funds. It's difficult to estimate the extent of this problem, as you know from your research, but candidly, we have only about 137.5 million, and I think a good back-of-the-envelope estimate is we need closer to 750 to $1 billion to get the job done.
Let's talk about the claims process.
Yes.
You mentioned 150 to 200 pages of documents that people have to upload and have to have in order. What are the key things that people need to keep in mind? It's
very important that we know where you live, obviously. It's very important that we know the age of your house, because the legislation pertains to the construction of your house being in 1983 and subsequent. It's important that we get proof from you that you own the house. And if you go on the website and go to the application process, for Type 1s and Type 2s, there's a very specific list of things that you must provide as part of your application. It's pretty straightforward stuff. The application itself takes about 18 to 20 minutes to complete. It's pretty straightforward. It's the upload of documentation that clearly takes time. It's very carefully enumerated there, and realtors who are, trying on a friendly basis to help homeowners, I direct them to the site, because if you've got a good idea of the way the application process works as a realtor, you can help homeowners.
The properties that can apply, that are eligible, let's just cover those quickly.
Yes. Anything that you think is eligible is probably eligible. There is one current exclusion in the program, which is a legislative exclusion that we had no control over, and I understand from the 3 ex officio members of my board who are elected representatives that they're going to be taking steps shortly to fix that legislatively. And that is, if you're on a foundation platform and you own a condominium or a PUD, and you are 5 units or more on that platform, you're currently ineligible. My personal reaction is that was just simply wording that could have been corrected. But we are actively engaged right now. In fact, tonight I go to a condominium association board meeting, and I address that condominium association about how they can be eligible within the context of 4 units or fewer on the same foundation. I'm very hopeful that that one condo exception issue is going to get fixed very soon. But meantime, we are actively engaged with condo owners right now taking their applications.
Like you said, getting in line.
Getting in line. Sometimes those applications are incomplete, sometimes they lack particular points of evidence, but they're in line. And what's important is if you are in line and even if your claim is inactive, the minute we get your data and make you active, you move to the top of the pile. An active claim will always trump an inactive one.
So for somebody who may want to file a claim in the future, they
Yes.
purchase a home, one of the application requirements to the indemnity company is that they have either a visual test or a core test done by a professional engineer here in Connecticut prior to that sale, that purchase of that home. Once they do that, how long is that test good for?
Excellent question. Yeah, that's a good question. So here's what has to happen. On February 1 of 2019 and subsequent, in order to affect the buyer-seller transaction, if you want to file a claim at some point in the future, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
A year, 2 years, a decade from now, what you need to have is a pyrotite core test or a visual inspection by a licensed engineer. That has to be part of the portfolio of the transaction between the buyer and the seller. Either a pyrotite core test showing the presence of pyrotite or a visual examination. Hang on to that document, because if 2 years from now you want to make a claim with CFSIC, with the captive, we'll ask first when you bought the home. The second thing we'll ask is whether or not you have either a pyrotite core test or a visual examination. But I'll take it one step further. Let's say that you hang on to that home for 5 years and you're selling it 5 years from now. Well, the fact that you have a pyrotite core test proves on that home that you have the presence of pyrotite. What you'll want to do to affect that new sale is have a secondary visual examination done by a licensed engineer. It could be that nothing has transpired in those 5 years. It could be a lot has transpired. And that's the purpose of the program. The purpose of the program is to make sure that people have a good sense of how they may apply in the future when they have the manifestations, the deteriorations of pyrotite. We want to have a good paper trail that suggests that people observe the rules in far in advance as we can.
In regards to that pre-purchase test,
Yes.
if you do the visual inspection only, not the core sample, that needs to be done with each subsequent transaction. That does not carry over
That's
in
correct.
perpetuity.
So if you sell that home, if that home goes through 5 purchase and sales, I'm going to need 5 visual inspection examinations by a licensed engineer here in Connecticut. However, I will only ever need 1 pyrotite core sample.
And it's not required to purchase a home. It's not a requirement to complete
not
the
at all.
sale. But you
It's
would
only required from us. our
exactly. You
standpoint.
would recommend that if somebody is purchasing a home in any of these affected communities, even if there's no signs right now, have that test done.
We're not imposing that as part of the buyer-seller transaction. Only your realtors can manage that process. We're just cautioning them and the public at large that if at some point you think you may have a claim, even if you have no deterioration, visible presence of pyrotite at all, the best way to get in line is to prove you've done this.
Talking again about that test, whose name does it need to be in? Like if I'm the seller and I say, you know what, let me get this test done, does it apply to a potential buyer or does the buyer have to actually do the test?
Somebody has to be aware. If the building was built after, the residential building was built after 1983, someone has to be, buyer or seller, in possession of that document.
So the important fact is the property address on that, not necessarily the name?
That's right. Because at some point, somebody's going to make a claim. We think, we don't hope that to occur for the obvious reason, because it's very disruptive to someone's life. But to the extent a claim happens, to the extent you begin to see visible signs of map cracking in your foundation, and that's 3 years after that February 1, 2019 hypothetical date, right? It's 3 years after the fact. The first question we're going to ask is, did you have something done that helped protect you and put you in line for aid from us? That'll be the first question we ask. You'll then make a subsequent claim because your deterioration has occurred or you have evidence, visual evidence of some map cracking. You'll come through as a claimant, but you'll come through as a claimant who did the right thing back on February 2nd, 2019.
You mentioned realtors, and what advice or recommendation would you give to them to give to their clients, considering all this?
Get familiar with our website. We've tried to make the website. It's simply www.crumblingfoundations.org. Get familiar with our website. Go in and look at the For Homeowners section. Make sure you look at the participation agreement. Make sure you look at the application so that when you're meeting with a prospective buyer or seller, you have some information about how the program works. Call me.
They can call you directly.
Absolutely. Call my office. I'll talk to anybody who wants to talk about this program. We've received a number of calls from members of the Realtors Association. My staff or I have taken a number of those. We get calls from claimants all the time. The claimants adjusters are available. We want to disseminate as much information as we can. What's the real reason for this? The real reason for this is we want the buyer-seller transaction to succeed. We don't want it to stop. There's another motive here. And candidly, I don't have enough money, and we've discussed that. We've been candid about it. We also have an issue with people investing in crumbling foundation homes and turning them over. Candidly, I don't have enough money to support that entrepreneurial process. And as a human being with a personal point of view, I don't know that I want to support it. What I want to do is I want to keep you in your home if you want to stay there. That's my job.
You bring up the flipping of houses, so to speak. Someone who is interested.
That's a better way to put it than I just did.
Someone who is interested in doing that would not be eligible under this.
Well, you must, if you are going to buy a home under our program and make a claim. So the key always here is, are you going to make a claim? Do you plan to make a claim? If you buy a home after October 31 of 17, that's when Governor Malloy signed the legislation. My board's position, and they debated this pretty hotly for several hours, my board's position is on or after October 31 of 17, you should have known that there was a crumbling foundations problem. You should have known that legislation was passed. If you buy a home after 10/31/17 and you want to file a claim with me, I'm going to force a 12-month residency requirement on you. You'll have to sign a representation letter saying you intend to live in the home for 12 months. What's my job? My job is to restore homes to homeowners who want to stay there.
What other exclusions are there, I guess, to the program?
Exclusions, actually surprisingly few, because we don't operate like a commercial insurance company. The preponderance of evidence is if you are a type 1 or a type 2 and you give us the material we need to validate who you are in your claim, you're put pretty quickly in line for payment. This is not the usual commercial insurance company transaction where I sell you a policy and you give me a premium and then I either accept or deny your claim. Once you show us who you are and the preponderance of evidence, you're in line to be paid, subject to the finite amount of funds we have. But I think what's really important here is to emphasize something else that I'll say again. It is better to be in line than not to be in line, even if your documentation is incomplete, even if you are still in litigation, which makes you inactive under our program if you're in litigation with a commercial insurer or awaiting the outcome of a claim. Get in line. It's better to be there than for us not to know who you are.
You mentioned the website a number of times, crumblingfoundations.org. How important is that website to the public, to you, as that means of communication?
What we are asking people to do is every Monday go to the website. There'll be new stuff up there that is candid. I reported last week or so a glitch that we had in the computer system that caused some delays in the processing of claims. We're being very candid and exceptionally transparent, as we need to be. But go to the website every Monday. There'll be new stuff that's there. There'll be a new path for you to follow in terms of how you complete an application.
Is there anything else that you would like to add that's relevant to our realtor membership that they really need to keep in mind when approaching this topic?
Yes. A couple of things, if I could. The first is draw a distinction between what I require and what you require as a professional realtor to do a transaction. They're two different things. It's important. The imposition of our rules or guidelines on your sale, there isn't any. We're just warning you and making sure people understand that the more you reveal about the Crumbling Foundation's process, by directing people to the site, by reminding them of the February 1 issue you and I just discussed, the greater service you perform to the buyer and seller, and the more professional the process gets to be. I promised at a public meeting on October 13 before 300 people with the Crumbling Foundations that help would be on the way. And it is, and it was, and we need the help of realtors to spread the message.
Okay. Thank you for helping to spread the message as well, and for joining us here today on CTR TV. Again, Mike Maglaras from the Connecticut Foundation Solutions Indemnity Company.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is.
That's why we call it CFSIC.
There you go. But people get confused when you say CFSIC without that. Again, the website for the foundation, the Indemnity Company, is crumblingfoundations.org. Check it out. Lots of information, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.